Hey, welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus. We're about to get started live, and we look forward to having you folks on the show. And we got some great guests today. So sit back and relax, and I'm going to welcome everybody to the show. Fantastic. Got a little bit of Bob going. Oh, yeah. Come on. You are loved. Welcome to Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus. And you're here for another Wednesday, Woke Wednesday blast coming at you. All right, let's bring it down a bit. Hey, how are you doing, folks? I'm glad to have you back here on Woke Wednesday. Glad to have you back here on the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus. We are here welcoming back Small Business Caucus folks, Democrats, small business, Democratic owners, small business people, soon to be small business people, just everybody. It's fantastic. The Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus live. Welcome back. And we're going to come at you with the first thing we always do, folks. We're going to say, hey, how much we love you. We're also going to tell you, you know what? You need to be woke, because there's things going on Woke Wednesday, but you need to be woke every day of the week. And I'm here to talk to you about first things first out the bat. Have you gotten your COVID shot? If you haven't, I'm urging you to get your COVID vaccination. You know, things are happening all over. We got this new Omicron thing that's out there, and it is definitely working its way through the country. And we want to make sure that everybody here remains safe and everybody is remaining as safe as they can be. And in order for you to remain safe, you need to make sure you have your shot. Having your shot is important. So make sure that you've gotten your shot and that you are ready to go with your shot so that you can keep yourself healthy. And right now, the booster shot is out there. Right now, you need to go make sure you get that booster shot, that third shot. And as we're coming here live to you, making sure that you're dealing with this new Omicron thing that's out there, the new variant. It is taking the country by storm. So folks need to make sure that they're doing what they need to do as far as that is concerned, and making sure that you're going to be here for your friends and family and everybody that loves you. And we want to make sure that you're here. As I'm also looking for my co-host, I don't see my co-hostess with the mostest, and that is going to be my favorite, Erin Porche. She may be coming on soon, so folks, stay woke. She's going to be out here helping me pretty soon. If not, it's just going to be me, but I'm always happy to be out here talking to you. Now, remember, I'm going to talk about this Omicron thing for just a moment. My wife is a nurse, and I'm in the Northern Virginia area, and she works over in Prince George's County, right across the bridge. And she's definitely telling me, listen, you definitely need to make sure that you are getting your shots and you're getting the things that you need, because there is definitely a big push on what's happening around the country. So I'm just trying to tell all the folks out there that I know and that I love that they need to make sure that they get that shot. And listen, folks, we're also running live from my home. Looks like I hear a fire alarm, but it's not. It's just the kitchen thing. Some folks are cooking, getting ready for Christmas and some other things. So it looks like there's been some sort of smoke in the kitchen. But hang in there with me, folks. It's all part of a live production. Now, let's go back to the COVID thing. If you haven't gotten your shot yet, folks, please get your shot. If you haven't got the information that you need regarding your shot, go out there and make sure you're checking where you need to check for the most correct information. And then when you've decided what you want to do, go ahead and get those 2 initial shots. Now you've got a third shot that you need to get for a booster. Make sure you do that, because we want you to be here, because, you know, we love you. We want to make sure that you're here for your family and your friends, and that you're out here making sure you're going to do what you need to do to make this country a better place. So get your shot. And Omicron is no joke. It is moving fast and infecting people. And we want to make sure that if you should get infected by the COVID and the new variant that's out there, that you're going to make it through and there's not going to be any problems with you and your loved ones. So go ahead and get that shot. That's my word to you. So if you haven't done it, do it. It is a must that you do it. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about Virginia. As we talk about what I love to talk about in Virginia is we had a little bit of a mishap in Virginia in our statewide elections. Of course, we're working hard to make sure we overcome that next time around as Democrats. But there's also the redistricting that is going on. And that redistricting is going on right now, which does affect your ability to vote. It affects your ability to operate as an individual and elect people on a local, on a state, and on a federal level. That redistricting is important. I know in our area, there's comments against the redistricting that's going on and things that they may be able to make some changes to one way or the other. But it's a big deal. That's also a big deal around the country. I talked about this last time during our show. What the redistricting actually does is every 10 years, you have a census. And when we have that census, everybody in the country gets counted. Whether or not they're citizens or they're not, everybody gets counted. And that count that happens every 10 years is how we determine how many Congress people that you have for your House of Representatives. Of course, every state gets 2 senators on a federal level, but how those congressional districts are set up and how they're redistricting based upon the population, you could either lose Congress people or gain Congress people. We as Democrats should be gaining more folks, but in order to make sure that we don't get gerrymandered out of those seats and on a local and on a federal level, we need to make sure that we have people who are at the state level that are actually making those decisions. And each state has their own way of doing it. But if there are Democrats in there, they're going to be making those decisions based upon the sort of values and things that we believe that are good for the country. So you need to get out there and vote. You need to make sure that you're voting, not just for the presidential elections, but you're voting in your local elections. You're voting in your state elections that are what you need to vote in, because those are the things that affect you most directly other than your local elections. Because at the statewide level, you have state senators and you also have state delegates. They make those decisions regarding redistricting. And in some states, the governor signs off on it. Different states do it different ways. But what's most important is when you do vote, you make sure that you have people in there that are representing the values and the things that you believe in and the things that we're trying to get done as Democrats. So make sure you're getting out there and you're voting. Voting is extremely important. What? Yes, I'm talking about it all the time. Look at the shirt here. Voting rights and being able to vote, being able to make sure that the laws that are being put out there that causes voter suppression right now is happening at a state level. And when it happens at a state level, they're determining how you vote, when you can vote. Excuse me, folks, as I try to work with my phone here as we trying to make sure we don't get too much volume. Let's turn that volume off for that ring. But we want to make sure that these things are all these different laws that are being passed at a state level now, over 443 laws that affect your voting rights. And they're happening all across this country in more than 43 states, more than 440 some laws. And those laws basically are voter suppression laws. And how they're doing it now is they are actually passing laws that limit absentee voting or either voting by mail or getting rid of it altogether. Or they're passing laws that says you can't bring people food or water in line while they're waiting, or either they're passing laws where you should have more voting machines that are close to you and voting polls that are close to you so that you can easily vote. And they're making sure that there's not as many voting poll places in high population areas, often where there are African Americans, Latinos, poor people who tend to be Democrats and other folks, making it difficult for them to vote, or getting rid of voting on weekends, all kind of different things. These things are what we talk about when you hear people talk about Jim Crow 2.0. It's not the things that they used to do in the past where they would, have the Ku Klux Klan run out there and, try to burn your house down if you vote, or ask you to count the number of bubbles on a bar of soap, or guess how many, jelly beans are in a jar, or recite the Constitution. The sort of things that are going on now are things that are a little more sophisticated that cause that. And how we're trying to fix that is the reason why I get on here every week, once a week, and tell folks that you've got to agitate, you got to activate and agitate, which means you've got a call to action. And that call to action is you need to call your senator, you need to call your Congress person in your state, and you need to tell them we want you to support voting rights. Voting rights are important. They are fundamental to a democracy, that you're able to vote, because they are the people who pass the laws that affect how you're going to live your life and who's going to get what resources, the things that you want. When you talk about Build Back Better, you talk about the things that are in that package that people are trying to get done. Democrats are trying to get done for the country, which is more affordable health care, reduced costs or no costs, or forgiveness of college loans, or other different things that are out there in that plan. There's a ton of things, but listen, they can't get done if you don't have the right people in your Congress that are actually able to pass those laws, and making sure it gets through the Senate and that it gets to the president's desk so he can sign it. Then, of course, that's how that hamburger is made, how these laws get passed. But these are fundamental things. And I always talk about it because I want people to understand voting rights are extremely important. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about voting rights, right? Voting rights are extremely important. If you don't have voting rights, then you are unable to get the things done that you want to get done. So how do we get things done? First, we've got a couple of things that are out there. And let's start off by talking about HR 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which basically what it does is puts back into place the pre-clearance that was taken away in 2013. That pre-clearance that was taken away in 2013 that basically said if any changes are going to be made to any of the voting rules, it has to be done at least 180 days before an election. And also it has to go through the Department of Justice. And it also gives the government authority to send federal observers to monitor jurisdictions for any potential risk of discrimination at the polls or any of those things. So what you need to do is call your congressman, give them a call once a week or every day. There's plenty of tools out there that you can use that basically say, listen, congressperson, I don't care whether they're Democrat or Republican, I'm watching. We want voting rights Advancement Act passed, the John Lewis Act passed. We want to make sure it gets to the president's desk and he can sign it, because we don't want anybody messing with our voting rights. Messing with our voting rights means they are fundamental to running a democracy. That is the reason why they try so hard with gerrymandering, making it difficult for you to vote, all the different things that they do out there to make it hard for you to vote. And you want to make sure that your congressperson realizes that you are watching. The other thing that's out there too is the For the People Act, which is HR 1, which again emphasizes putting the full protections of the 1965 voting rights back into place, which was decimated by the Supreme Court in 2013. It asks for 2 weeks of early voting for all voters. It expands access to voting, automatic and same-day voter registration nationwide. Finance reforms for banning foreign money and loopholes, election security, independent commissions to prevent gerrymandering, grants to states to help them make sure they have enough voting machines, and make sure that the processes for auditing and everything else to make sure that we can still have open and fair elections in this country. Even in the time of COVID, we had the most people that have ever come out to vote in the last election of 2020, and the most fairest and cleanest election that has happened in our history, even with all the challenges that we have. So it's important, extremely important, that you call your congressman. Your call to action is call your congressman every day and let them know voting rights is important. We want to make sure that voting rights get passed, and that it gets to the president's desk for his signature. So everybody has those fundamental right to vote as an American citizen, and everybody is playing by the same rules, and there's not different patchwork of rules in each and every state. The 1965 Voting Rights Act is what ensured that, and it was renewed on a regular basis. But what they're trying to do now is even improve upon that, making sure this does not have to get renewed and that it's a permanent law that's out there. And may the best person with the best ideas, the best policies, may that person garner the most votes and gets elected. That's what a free and open election is all about. So everything that we're looking for to get done starts with voting rights. Doesn't matter where you sit on the fence, whether you're right, left, in the middle, or doesn't matter. Everybody has a right to unfettered access to the polls in order to vote for the candidate that they believe in and that they believe can deliver the best things for them. Now, that's at a federal level, that's at a local level, that's at a state level. There's a lot of issues and concerns that happen at a state level. So it's important, again, that you have the right to unfettered access to vote for federal elections, that you have the right to be able to vote for your state senator, for your state delegate. Those are the ones that are making laws that affect you the most and closest to you, your state and local elections. And also, they're the ones that make all the decisions regarding things for gerrymandering and other different things. So all those things are extremely important. So folks, get out there and vote. Get out there and do what you need to do. What's the call to action? The call to action for your voting rights? The call to action is call your congressman. Call those folks and let them know that you are watching and you want those things passed so that they get to the president's desk and they get signed. Folks, this is live streaming television. We've got holiday folks going on, man. My daughter's still celebrating her birthday and cooking and whatnot. So we got a little bit of noise going on, but guess what? That's live television. You may get anything in live television, but it's live internet. So there's a little background noise, but I believe I'm talking loud enough so that you hear me, and my daughter is celebrating her 25th birthday. But guess what? I don't take a day off on Wednesdays. I'm coming here with this message to let you know that you need to vote and that you need to get out there and make sure that the things that you believe in and the people that you support get into office and make those laws that are going to help your community, they're going to help your children, they're going to help your small business, that are going to help them on a state, local, and federal level. Everything starts with voting rights, fundamental to a democracy, like air to your body. You cannot have a democracy without voting rights. We don't want to end up with a minority of people ruling a majority of people because they're messing with the way the system the votes get counted, or they're messing with the way people have access to vote. They need to have access to vote, and we need people not messing with the way we get our votes completed and done. And those sort of things are extremely important. So that's my wife looking in on me saying hello as I'm doing my live podcast. Man, you got to love family. I love family. Okay. But anyway, we're getting it done. So listen, I've talked about voting rights. Voting rights are important. Hi, baby. Just coming home from work. Good to see you. Merry Christmas. It's not Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa and Christmas are two different things. But anyway, voting rights are important. What we try to do here on this show every week is be informative. We want to be informal. We want to be engaging. We want to just have a conversation with a special guest that we have on once a week and just let people hear it straight. Make it easy. You know what? There's a gentleman out there. His name is Joe Madison. They call him the Black Eagle. He's out there now refusing to eat solid food until Voting Rights Act gets passed. This guy is putting it on the line. I'm not saying that you have to refuse to eat solid food, but I'm saying at least you can pick up your phone and you can dial your congressman and say, hey, congressperson, we're watching. Voting rights need to get passed, and we're looking, and we know that that's an important thing. And I heard Mark Kennedy on a podcast saying, hey, I was at the March on Washington. We're supporting voting rights. Mr. Congressman or Miss Congressman, listen, we need you to get this done. Get it done. get it to the president's desk and get it passed so we can all get out there and move on past this while we take care of this COVID thing. So we can basically do chew gum and walk at the same time. We can get things done. And I'm encouraging you, and hopefully I'm motivating you, because if I can take my time, I can do it. Get yourself activated, get agitated, get your friends out there. Certain people are out there protesting. Certain people are out there not eating solid food. Certain people are out there calling friends and family saying you need to make sure that you're supporting voting rights, because that's how we save our democracy. There was an insurrection on January 6th. Listen. You can only keep a democracy the way Ben Franklin said, well, you've got a republic if you can keep it. And so if you want to keep it, get involved. Make sure you're voting local, state, federal, calling your congressperson, saying, get that Voting Rights Act passed, and then work on the different policies and things that you want to see get done on a local, state, and federal level. But it requires something of you as a citizen. You just can't sit back and do nothing. And depending upon the things that you value in your life, depending upon the things, I know everybody has a family, they have children that they love. Small business owners want to make sure they're getting a fair shake. Everybody has something that they want to get done. And that all starts with your right to vote. Because if you don't secure your right to vote, then whatever you have can be taken away from you. And taking away from you simply by having the wrong people in office, the wrong people getting appointed to the Supreme Court, state courts, federal benches, all of that affects you directly. It affects the money that's available for you and your business. It affects the money that's available for healthcare. It affects the money that is available for college and vocational training and certification courses. It's your money. You pay the taxes. You're not going there with your hat in your hand. You're basically going there and saying, listen, these are our taxes. We're paying them to the government. We want people who are actually in the government that we elect that are doing the things that we want them to do. Trust me, the people who don't believe in what you believe in are looking to stop you. And the only one who can save you is you. So that means say something, do something, at least pick up the phone, right? That's all I'm asking you to do, folks. So we're asking you to do that. And listen, we've done some fantastic things. I'm going to just get back to you and just kind of tell you a few other things before we bring on our fantastic guests. We've got a fantastic guest too. But, listen, the Democrats have been doing some things out there with the American Rescue Plan. I told you there's a Paycheck Protection Program. These are economic injury and disaster loans that are out there for folks. There's a Shuttered Venue Operation Grant Program, SBA debt relief, and of course the Restaurant Revitalization Fund that's out there. So we passed a $1.2 trillion plan just to keep people moving who were small businesses who were affected. There was also money that was given directly to people that Democrats voted to make sure it happened. So you had some resources in your pocket as we were trying to get the economy back on its feet. Now, right now, we've got very high and full employment. But listen, there are still other concerns that are out there. And those other concerns we need to get addressed. But we can't address them if we want to be ready for 2022 and 2024. We need to get Voting Rights Act passed. We need to make sure that that's out there because there's some other concerns that need to be addressed. And we don't want to get people in a situation where they're saying after the horse is already out of the barn, what happened? You want to basically determine what happens and stop the horse from running out of the barn until you're ready to ride that horse and ride it to where you want to go. That's why I'm spending my time as the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Chair to talk to small business owners, to talk to fellow Democrats, to talk to other interested individuals, and just all people who are out there that are interested in this democracy that we have here in this country to make sure everybody has free, unfettered access to voting and can get the things that they believe in accomplished by electing the right people who are committed to making those things happen and getting them through either your local or your state house or your federal house to the governor's office or to the president's office or to whoever is your mayor or whoever it is to make sure that those policies get signed into law and that you can live a better life. your best life, as I say. Live your best life. You only got one, so listen, get it done. Get it done for your kids and your grandkids. Get it done for you. Get it done for the rest of the country. So I'm urging that you do that. Let me go ahead and tell you what else I want to talk to you about before we get started. I'm going to take now to stop running my mouth so much because I get on my soapbox. I can go for a while. But listen, we've got a fantastic guest who's here today. Another small business owner, a fantastic gentleman. I attended the 2021 Black CannaCon, and one of the major things that are happening in this country is the cannabis laws that are out there being passed in different states. Laws that are being passed on a federal level. In Virginia, they've passed laws concerning cannabis. In certain states, it's legal. There's also national legislation that's moving through with the SAFE Act that is going to allow for the cannabis industry to actually access banking, and things are really going to take off. Right now, as we understand it as small business people, we're on track for $24 billion that the country is basically spending in this industry for the end of 2021. And on track over the next couple of years, this industry will turn into a $330 billion business. We are not talking a little bit of money, but more importantly, we're talking policy, equity, healthcare, and other things that are surrounded around this business. So many people who are people without means, so many African Americans, so many Latino people, and so many people who are without means, who are not African Americans or Latinos, were adversely affected with the cannabis laws that are out there. So a lot needs to be done to correct that policy, to make sure that that policy and equity is put in place so we can tell you what equity looks like, what correct policy looks like, what opportunities for people to be in that business as Virginians and as American citizens across the country. And we have a great guest today. His name is Paul McLean. And Paul is one of the most respected new voices in the cannabis industry. I actually met him when I went out to the 2021 CannaCon conference in New Orleans, where I met a lot of African Americans who are actually in the cannabis business and looking to affect healthcare policy, looking to affect equity, all those different things. And Paul's going to talk a little bit about that from a Virginia perspective. He'll probably talk about it from a national perspective. But let me tell you a little more about Paul. Since achieving business success, generating millions in sales through the construction industry, Paul has dedicated himself to helping Americans achieve financial success through entrepreneurship. That's what we're about here at the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus. His research and dedication revealed the sad reality that historically, African Americans have been systematically blocked from every major industry. This is an opportunity where this industry is coming online, and there can be equity and there can be policy, and he's going to tell you what that looks like. This reality actually inspired Paul to leverage his business background and his network to help African Americans achieve economic success through establishment of the Virginia Minority Cannabis Coalition, the VMCC. Through the VMCC, Paul works hand in hand with political and faith-based and educational leaders to provide economic opportunities to those who are willing to dedicate themselves to learn about the cannabis industry. So folks, without further ado, I got to get one of those clapping things. I want to bring on my man, Paul McLean of the Virginia Coalition, the Virginia Minority Cannabis Coalition. Paul, how are you doing, man? I'm glad to have you on, man.
Thank you, man. It's an honor and a privilege. I am blessed and highly favored to be sitting here healthy, able to talk with you and your guests and have a great conversation. I've been looking forward to this. I got everybody out of the house. I'm actually traveling for the holiday. I'm in Maryland, not back home in Virginia, but I got everybody out of the house to go look at the Christmas lights so that I can make sure that I can answer some questions and not be interrupted with daddy duties. So I appreciate you inviting me on.
Hey, man, Paul, I'm glad to have you on. And you can see all the activity that's going around here, man. I'm at home. There's all kind of stuff. I don't have little ones, but I have larger ones, and they're doing what they do. It sounds like that alarm keeps going off. Somebody's burning something. Nah, they're probably not. And you know how the oven gets smoked up, and man, those
Oh
are
yeah.
sensitive. But listen, I want you basically to tell us about the Virginia Minority Cannabis Coalition, how you got into this business, what you used to do. So I'm turning the mic over to you to just go ahead and flow, man. Tell us a little something about what you do and what you've been doing.
Man, that's a deep rabbit hole right there. Let me kind of share. I graduated from Hampton years ago. Just had our 20th reunion or whatever it was right before COVID.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to stop you. Did you say you graduated from Hampton University?
Yes, sir. Olger 8.
Oh, man. I didn't know you were Hampton alumni like me. How did that get by me?
My wife and I, both Olger 8, man, I live for my university. I love it to death. But that's another 2-hour talk we can talk about on another night. But I have since that time since graduating, I had several friends from school that got into the cannabis industry in different parts of the country. California, Illinois, Michigan, places that opened up before Virginia. Colorado was another one. Mm-hmm. And over the last decade, as I've traveled for business, for a while there, I was going out to Cali 3 times a year. And every time I would go visit my friends, go to their establishment, their business, because, being a business consultant, helping small business owners go from small to large companies, I was always curious about the industry, studying it, because I had tons of curiosity because I knew it was eventually going to happen in Virginia. But because of conversations I had with my friends, hearing about some of the bad things that happened, how some places didn't include equity, or some places included equity, but it was just enough to say that equity was included. And once the industry got started, equity disappeared. So I started researching. And then, like I said, during that time, I was doing business consulting with small business owners. And, my talent and focus in consulting has been expansion and finding new customers. And I was actually on my way to a meeting one day, and stopped at the 7-Eleven to get some coffee, and I looked down at the newspaper, and the newspaper says, hey, the first 5 licenses for cannabis have been issued in the state of Virginia. And I thought to myself, I was just in a meeting 2 days ago with some official people that told me this wasn't happening. So I started making some phone calls, made some inquiries, and I ended up eventually getting an opportunity to talk to some state officials. And I just started asking questions about equity. I started asking questions about, how many Black and brown people were given an opportunity to participate in this industry when there's so many Black and brown people who are incarcerated, who are suffering from the ills of being incarcerated for small amounts of possession. You know what I'm saying? Like a joint. And that joint has impacted 20 years of their life. So the questions I asked prompted me to be invited to participate in the legalization process. And I was on that work group process. So it was an evolution of doing something along the lines of what you were describing earlier in this meeting. I started making some phone calls, calling some politicians. I didn't like some of the answers I got. So whoever was picking up the phone that day was getting phone call from me. And I agitated enough people to get them to realize that I was serious and I was knowledgeable. And that's why I got that invitation. And that was an eye opener to see the behind the scenes of how this industry was formed. So went ahead and did that. But in that process of sitting in those meetings for a year, I started, I was not the only person bringing up equity. Columbia Care, the medical MSO, they kept bringing up social equity and was asking about how are we trying to include people in this. And so after asking, and then one day I realized, just from some of the feedback I was hearing on some of these meetings, because we were meeting like 2 or 3 times a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, I realized that equity was being talked about, but no one had an idea of what the heck it was, what it looked like. If you saw it, touched it, and tasted it, how would you know that was equity? Because what I started to realize is there's a lot of people that confuse equity with equality.
Not the same.
Different things. When it comes to business, those are drastic differences. So, because the way I explain it is, theoretically, we're all equal now.
Theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically, we're all equal now. But if me and a Latino gentleman, a Caucasian gentleman, and another Caucasian gentleman wanted to start a business just from the obstacles that come from starting any traditional business, talking about outside of cannabis, just if you want to open a frozen yogurt shop, that's a $250,000 investment into a frozen yogurt shop before you sell to the first customer. That's a huge obstacle. So I started looking at those kinds of things, and I tried to find out, okay, equality is what you need a better understanding of. And I realized, let me be the person to translate that. So an example that I like to use in that example of two minorities versus two people of European descent, if they go the traditional route to try and open up their frozen yogurt shop, the two gentlemen of European descent by math are going to get that store open faster with more resources. And I'm not saying that it's racism. I'm not saying that it's the system that's currently in place. And part of the issue is for small business owners trying to transition into a new industry, it's hard for Black and brown people if they don't already have a business track record. So our coalition was formed to create ways to leap over those barriers, ways to create more on-ramps. And in my mind, equity just can be described as true, unfettered opportunity for minorities. It's pure and simple. And that opportunity is not just giving them a chance with a license. It's all the things that go along with creating a successful business. Funding is one of the main things. In the last year, as I've traveled around the country and spoke to people and traveled around the state, a lot of people outside of our community don't understand how challenging it is for someone that's qualified to get that business loan because of all of the things that people want to see in terms of collateral and all that kinds of stuff. So we wanted to create the coalition, VMCC, wanted to create on-ramps so people that have dealt with incarceration, people who have started to start rebuilding their life, who have paid their debt to society, you know, those people need an opportunity. And some people ask me, well, why do they need an opportunity? And it's like this. That's the person that people in our society keep trying to blame everything on.
Exactly.
You know? So how can you keep blaming someone for something when you keep stacking all the deck against them? You know, that doesn't make, you can't have both. So with what we're looking at doing is creating on-ramps so people that have had issues in the past will have opportunity to get into this industry on the operator level, all the way through all the ancillary business levels, all the way through employment. But then we're also looking at this as a means of creating generational wealth. Because what typically happens is when a business owner becomes successful and they have children, the children typically observe. They end up in some sort of entrepreneurial pathway, even though it may not be working with their parent. But because they have seen entrepreneurship create a type of freedom and quality of life that they may not have seen, it sparks his interest to pursue entrepreneurship, even if it may be in a different space.
Absolutely.
The reason why our coalition is so interested in creating pathways to that is because you got to remember the industry of cannabis in the state of Virginia does not even exist yet.
Yes, exactly.
So for someone to say, yeah, these people that have been incarcerated shouldn't have an opportunity is insane. Because this is the reality of Virginia. More white/Caucasian, whatever you want to call them, people get arrested in the state of Virginia for marijuana possession. That's the math of it because of populace. However, the funny thing is, if you happen to be Black or brown, you are 3 times more likely to go to jail and serve time for that same possession. Okay. Right. So in my traveling and meeting and speaking, I've met people that have gone through the legal process, got their life back together, went to college, got a graduate degree, and still can't use that graduate degree because of getting pulled over for driving a very nice car, and they happened to find a joint in the car. After searching in the car, they found a joint. And here it is 19 years later, and this gentleman still can't get a job teaching, and he's got a master's degree. Has not had any issue since that time, but because something that happened when he was a kid, it suppresses his income. So what I started finding out, and I failed to mention, you know, in construction, being a mortgage banker, you look at a lot of credit reports and financials from people. And I've met a lot of people over that 11 years in that career that had credit, had money, you know, they had everything. They just had an incarceration for 2-3 years, you know, and that was the obstacle that had them in a situation where they should be making $85,000 a year and they're making 45. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as I started to see that, and when I was working with the coalition in the state, I started inquiring with some of the state economic people because they were sitting there. We got a break. I'm going to pick your brain. And it's interesting because wage suppression it's the secret weapon against young minorities that don't understand how making that mistake at a young point in their life, it can end up staying with you here in this state. Because what I ended up finding was in the construction industry, in the CDL driving industry, and in several of the civil engineering spaces, there's people that should be making that 85 and they're making that 45 because the employer says, you know what, man, Mark, I really should pay you 85 and I want to, but my attorney and everybody says because of that cannabis conviction 20 years ago, I can only pay you 45. Now, if you're a person that has been trying to reform your life since coming out of jail, you got a wife, a child, you're trying to do the right thing, you're kind of busy, you're kind of forced into taking that 45 grand. And the thing is, that person's got the same skill set as the person that doesn't look like them that's getting paid 85 grand. Okay.
Absolutely.
Cannabis convictions have been a means of using that pathway, that system, for a lot of companies to make a lot of money because they got stellar talent and they're not paying them stellar money. Okay. So that was where a lot of our motivation and motivation for educating and teaching about what equity is came into play. So when we're talking about equity here with the coalition, we're talking about people getting prepared for this industry before there is an industry. You got to get prepared because it takes a lot to get prepared. And then once they're prepared, having a true chance and opportunity to pursue a license and pursue business. One of the things I want to make sure I convey to people, Mark, because a lot of people don't realize this. In the state of Virginia, according to what the state is saying, the illicit market, the legacy market, the black market, whatever you want to call it, right now, this year was a $3 billion industry. So that means $3 billion in illegal cannabis exchanged hands in the state of Virginia. There was no tax revenue generated off of that.
Right.
Okay. That is concerning to me because I sit on one of the state cannabis boards where our task is reinvesting a portion of that tax revenue back into those blighted communities that have dealt with the war on drugs. Okay. So I want to help create a blossoming, beautiful industry that truly has a chance to grow. In order for that to happen, there needs to be inclusion. Okay. We do not want in Virginia the VMCC, we do not want to see happen in Virginia what has happened in other parts of the state, other parts of the country, like Colorado, for instance. You open up an industry, don't include any minorities, but when politicians were running for office to get into office to vote on cannabis, they were using pictures of black and brown people getting arrested talking about marijuana to get into office. And then when the people get into office, it's like, I don't know who you are. That can't happen here. That can't happen here. Our coalition is dedicated to making sure that we get included. And I want to clarify something that I hear.
I want to tell you something real quick on that. That's the exact reason when you mentioned earlier, and I'll let you keep going there, Paul, is that why the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus was not involved in any of the legislation or what's out there in the laws that have been passed to date. But there are comments on there. You know, you're in this business. And we're making sure that the Congress, the state politicians who are actually making those laws in Virginia are now going to include us. Of course, we've got some other issues and concerns because of the last election, but at least we still hold the Senate, and that would allow us to at least do some things. But I won't get into that. Talk more about the issues that you were talking about. But that's, I mean, that they hear all voices.
Access to capital is the key to any business launching successfully.
I don't care what.
I mean, without capital, you can't do anything in business. And the only reason you open a business is to make money. Period. That's the only reason you go through all of that stress is and I'm not saying to get rich. I'm saying to make money. That's the only reason you open a business. If it doesn't make money, you no longer have a business. Okay, it's that simple. Exactly. And I like the way you put that because, as we know, you don't get paid for hobbies. Okay. Exactly. So, we wanted to create ways to include people, to start educating people so they can start learning. One of the first things we implemented was our website. That website is VMCCequity.org. People can go, they can learn a little bit about me, they can learn about our boot camps. Boot camps were the second thing that we did. We just finished our first boot camp class. We graduated 9 people that went through a 5-week intensive of learning overall helicopter view of the cannabis industry, entire aspect of the industry. While they worked on that, they also went through 22 hours of video content where they received training and did home course study on their own time in between meeting with myself and our board members as we did the face-to-face training. And then that was the first part, the first phase. And then we had 9 people move on to where now we are working with those people over the next 60 days to help all of them complete their business plan, their pitch deck, and their bio. When we get into the first quarter of next year, the next step will be giving them an opportunity to start practicing pitching their business to investors. Okay, so the whole purpose here is to get people prepared and understanding. And our plan is to do 4 more boot camps at least next year. We hope to do 6, just depending on how COVID goes. So to reiterate what you were saying, if you have not gotten your COVID shot, go get it. To participate in our boot camp, you have to show proof of vaccination. We can't have people coming together to make people sick. That's not the reputation we want. So I encourage you all, if you have not, go ahead and take care of that. But with the boot camp, it is a means of accelerating the learning process with groups of people. Now, as we graduate each group of people coming out of the business operator boot camp, the top tier, we teach people how to start being politically active, how to make a phone call, why that phone call is so important, when to make that phone call, why to pay attention to your local politicians. Because what a lot of people, as I've traveled around the state, I've learned that a lot of people don't understand how the local election and the state elections are going to impact their access and their opportunity in the cannabis industry more than the federal.
Way more than the federal.
Way more.
Did I mention to you $24 billion this year and on track to go to a $330 billion business over the next couple of years?
Right, exactly. So the fees that people have to pay when it's time to open up that dispensary, that's carved out by the local politicians. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we try to get people to understand the federal is great for federal approval when that happens. The state is important for overall acceptance of the industry. However, those local elections are going to impact your small business in cannabis like you would not believe. Those will be the people that decide whether you have to pay a $25,000 licensing fee or a $250 licensing fee. Exactly.
Or whether or not there'll be equity.
Exactly. So we want to educate and empower and get people to understand that you got to start learning. It is not as simple as watching a few 15-second buzz clips on the news. You can't go off of what mama and them told you, what Ricky and all them down the street believe and what they heard about. You need to find out the facts so you can implement and take action based on real, actionable info.
And the other thing too that I would add to that too, Paul, is that you have to be talking to your local state delegates and your state senators to make sure that the laws and comments and things that are creating that legislation is inclusive of everyone. So you can get that equity piece, not that equality piece, the equity piece and the policies. And those policies affect a lot of other things. There's a lot of people who are out there that are in the healthcare industry and other places that are, those things have to be taken care of. But that's a whole nother conversation. We'll have some folks on to talk about that. But go ahead. I just wanted to add that real quick. Go ahead, Paul.
But you're right. Equity is something that people in the minority communities really got to understand, because some people like to confuse. Let me back up for a second. Some people like to try and say equity is giving something to people. Okay.
Right.
And let me clarify. VMCC is not saying or asking for anything more than guarantee that Black and brown people get included in the industry. We're not saying give away licenses. We're not saying make all the business owners Black in the state. We're not saying anything like that. All we're saying is guarantee the industry is representative of the population in jail and out of jail in this state. So to give you an idea, about 30 to 33% representation of minorities in the cannabis industry in Virginia is what we begin to feel is equitable. And I'm not saying give away this. I'm saying that every year there needs to be an understanding that if that number is not growing to that point, something's not being done right. Because if you look at the numbers of people that get incarcerated, and as people you can just go ahead and start digging and doing your research into the state, because the state did a lot of research about these arrest rates and numbers, and the majority of arrests in the state for Black and brown people happen in 3 places in Virginia. I'm not going to go into where. You can go research that on your own, but 3 counties in Virginia represent about half of the arrests of Black and brown people. Now, when you start researching that and you look into how municipalities make their money, it's through the legal system. Some places make money off of tickets and arrests. You understand? And I'll share this on that. When I was on the work group process 2 years ago, one of the state's attorneys explained that the number 2 employer in the state was the prison system.
Well, that's all over the country. There's over 2 million Americans incarcerated. We incarcerate more people in the United States than any other country.
Yes, it's a straight.
There's a whole industry that's surrounded around it. But go ahead.
The penal industry. It is a straight industry. But when you start driving across the state, you get to parts of the state where you can see a prison every 25 miles. And there's a lot of people that make 55 and 65 and 75 grand a year working at these prisons. And it was jokingly said in some of these meetings, but I got what they were saying. They were saying there's some people in the middle of the state that aren't going to be happy about legalizing marijuana and taking away all of these things that have been used to basically funnel people into the prison system, into the justice system, because that keeps somebody employed on the other side of that situation.
Yeah.
So as an equitable effort and as an organization based on creating opportunity and including people, we view this as an opportunity for Virginia to shift and pivot like no state in the South has. Not just creating true opportunity for cannabis for everyone to have a great industry to participate and capitalize on, but also those people that may be working in the prison system that may make that kind of income. They have to be focused on job transition too. As a society evolves, economics are supposed to evolve. Some of those people can transition into some of the industries in cannabis where they'll be able to make comparable, if not better money without having their life in jeopardy. The other thing is that when we bring equity and equity begins to hit expungement, begins to hit educating people about cannabis and the health benefits of cannabis, as well as people understanding opportunity, that creates a situation where some of those people that have been dealing in the prison system will find happiness outside of the prison system, working next to the people they used to incarcerate. because not everyone that is in jail right now should be in jail for cannabis possession. We're not talking about everybody with a trafficker. We're talking about small things. Now, the reason I keep emphasizing this is because there's several studies that the state did where their own research showed that Black and brown people were targeted, and that's why they want to do this right. And granted, that was on the administration heading out, but that's why, as a coalition, as a community, we want to keep this at the front of everybody's conversation, to keep people's feet to the fire, because we are about to go into one of the most opportunistic times in this country's economy. And I'm going to paint a picture here. Virginia is the key state to cannabis in the South. It's the first state in the South to basically legalize adult use, okay, as well as medical use, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at where Virginia is and you look at Virginia's history, it impacts a lot of states going south, North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, and such. Mm-hmm. If Virginia does it right and they include Black and brown people to where Black and brown people can achieve success in the industry side by side with Caucasian people in the same industry, that is a new industry that rivals the .com industry 40 years ago, that raises the tide economically for everyone. You cannot tell me if the people who have been at the bottom of the tax-paying scale because of wage suppression move up 4 levels and quadruple their income over a 4-year period, you cannot tell me that will not improve the state's economy, because those people can now buy houses, pay more property taxes. That means you can hire more teachers. That means you don't have to have 35 kids in the classroom. Maybe you can get it down to 15 kids in the classroom because you have this additional money now from creating a prosperous industry, not an industry that you have a handful of people controlling the industry. Exactly. That will destroy the opportunity here, because something you got to remember, 2 things. One, when it comes to the cannabis industry, you don't have to explain to the customer what the product is like you had to explain what a pager or a cell phone was. You understand what I'm saying? They've been using the product for a long time. And the second thing you got to remember is if the state messes it up, they always have a competitor waiting in the wings called the legacy market, aka the black market, which is still thriving because it did $3 billion. You know, that's pretty solid. You know, so if the state messes this up, they will do very similar to what California did, which is create more opportunity for that legacy market. And here we are almost 20 years later, and the state of California is still trying to fix the industry that they launched because they didn't do it right. They have
let me ask you this question, Paul.
Resolutions, man. That's crazy.
Let me ask you this question. We go a little bit over time on the show, but the question that I want to ask you is the legislation which is currently out there. Have you been tracking that legislation, commenting against it? Plus, the legislation that's out there has basically laid out, decriminalized it. They haven't done all the expungements yet, right?
Nope. There is no expungement mechanism in place.
Also, the comment period. What sort of people are you tracking that legislation? Are you commenting during open comment period? Are you working with people like the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus and other organizations that will also stand up and say, hey, what's going on? Just like you said, there were some dispensaries that were put out there, but nobody knew.
Exactly. Nobody knew. To answer your question, yes.
And why? Was there an equity piece in that? What about the policies that are behind that? All those sorts of things need to be addressed. And the voters need to make sure that they're knowledgeable about this so that they know that that legacy wealth that is trying to be created for the folks who've been adversely affected by it. And also African Americans are 20% of the population in Virginia. So I think that number 30 or 20% of that business is a very fair number. Represented, because they're definitely overrepresented in the incarceration systems. Pretty high number, right? As a result of that. So these things is the reason why people need to get involved. They need to vote. They need to understand what their politicians are doing, what's happening in this industry, so they can have better opportunities for themselves. And like you said, move some of those resources toward healthcare that come from it and education. But go ahead and Let me give you a couple of final words. We're right at the 8 o'clock hour, but I'm going to push it another 5 minutes. I like the conversation.
Well, you hit several of the things right on the head, man, and I don't want to take longer than I need to, but you're right. I have been participating, I have commented, and I have been watching. It's been interesting to see how some people that were anti-marijuana when it was a Democratic administration, they were anti-marijuana, and now that the tide has shifted, now they're pro-cannabis. You see how that language changes there? Marijuana and cannabis. It's been very eye-opening. But there's some people that have kind of, I'm talking politician-wise, have sat in the background, in the wings, because they really did not understand. They really did not understand how this industry could work, because a lot of people still have the stigma in their mind, and that's where that education comes in. So we have done a lot of trying to educate people privately so that they can really have a chance to get their questions answered. And that's been very helpful. And we've helped to educate some people to where they understand how you can assemble this industry and it can be prosperous for everyone. Now, going forward, I
want to stop you 1 quick second, so I'm adding a little more time. When you take the opioid industry and the Sackler family and all the overdoses that have happened as a result of that family and those people not going to jail over it, you don't have any of the sort of problems like that surrounded around this industry. But you had one particular family that controlled legal opioids that actually took the lives of literally hundreds of thousands and still doing it here in this country. So we need to do this right. And I'm not bringing this up because I'm equating one with the other, but I'm simply saying because one is not what the other is.
Not at all.
At the same time, when you talk about the education piece and the equity piece, you need to people need to understand the contrast and what's out there from the equity perspective, a policy perspective, for people in the industry, whether they be dispensaries, healthcare, manufacturing, tourism. There's so many facets to this industry why it will be a $330 billion industry. And it's not based on dispensaries. It's based on all these other things and ancillary businesses that are associated with this, where African Americans or minorities in Virginia need to have an opportunity to be a part of the initial gold rush, and the policy and the equities are correct. But go ahead, sir. Keep going.
That was spot on, because people got to understand that when you hear cannabis legalization, people always think about a dispensary or a cultivator or grow farm.
Exactly.
So for instance, that dispensary has probably 12 to 15 other smaller businesses that support that business so it functions smoothly. All of those other businesses don't have the same licensing requirement as that dispensary would. They don't necessarily have the 7-figure capital requirement. Right. Some of these businesses, you can work out of your garage or a small strip mall storefront and make a significant 6-figure income. You see, so we want to educate people about all those opportunities, because we don't want everyone to think, man, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not business savvy enough to be a dispensary owner. That may or may not be true, but there's tremendous opportunity, because remember, the industry needs everything. So to give you an example, if we have Black and brown people that are out here already working in HVAC, already electricians, already working in lighting, already working in construction, already working in solar panels, already working in computer wiring and all of that.
Private security.
Exactly. Private security, secure transportation, all of those things have a direct transfer point over into the cannabis industry, because they're all needed and they're all essential, but we don't have enough people in our community recognizing that. So one of the things that we'll be doing in next year, along with all the legislative stuff we're working on, is getting more information out into the community to educate people about what I just described, but also we'll be rolling out some boot camps for people that do want to pursue those ancillary businesses, as well as employment behind that. So we will create on-ramps for all of those things. And it's just a matter of me having enough time in the 365 days we'll have to be able to get all of that in place. And I'm excited because our board and our partners in the community and across the state are excited. And I want to go back to one last thing before I shut up and I'll be done. What you were saying about opiates, people got to understand that in parts of the country that have been struggling with an opiate crisis, when cannabis legalization happened in those areas, the opiate consumption went down. And that's across the country. That's regardless of race, economic level. It's because a lot of people got addicted to those opiates just trying to manage regular pain. So we want to continue to create more opportunity, create more dialogue. We want to welcome inclusion and talking with people, but understand we are going to fight until there's no more fight left to ensure that Black and brown people get included in this industry. Because we really believe that by people getting included, and I'm not saying being given anything, just being included, they'll have an opportunity to prosper like they have never been able to prosper in this state.
Well, you've hit the head on the nail on the head right there. And one of the things that I want to be able to say, I want to have you back on the show,
sure,
so you can regularly sort of tell people and update people about this industry and update folks on what's happening as from a legislation standpoint, and let people know how they can get involved. The Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus will be happy to work with you and other people to make sure that there is equity, that there is policy. We're having people come on the show because this industry is vital to people.
Yes.
Who I think who have not been able to get involved in an industry. I like your comparison to the .com boom. Go back further with the gold rush, but there is so much surrounded around this business where the narrative has been all negative. Yes. And now the narrative now it's positive, and people are in a position to actually take advantage of this and to be able to create legacy wealth for their families and to create taxes and resources for the state of Virginia and across the country. So it's a fantastic thing. Listen, I want to ask you this. If people want to be able to contact you, how do they get to you, Paul?
Oh, they can get to me right through the website. Our contact information is right on there. They can submit a question if they got a question. If they want to learn about or apply to the boot camp to get into the boot camp cohorts next year, they can do that on the website. Our contact number is on there. Send an email address. They can reach out to us through that way, and then we'll get back to them. But I want people to understand that this is going to be very hard. And when I'm talking about hard...
Before you leave that part of your website, I want you to slowly pronounce your website again for people. They can always run the tape back, but go ahead and say it again. Your website.
Real easy. VMCC for the Virginia Minority Cannabis Coalition. So VMCC Equity. EQUITY.org.
There you go. So are you guys on any social media platforms?
Yeah, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and I'll be rolling out more on Facebook because we'll be actually opening up our membership platform after the first of the year. So people that want to align with our mission, want to start learning, getting some behind the scenes information that we have with some business owners, because we set up private conversations for our boot campers and our members behind the scenes where they talk to people out in California, Colorado, and other parts of the country that are acting in the industry now so they can get firsthand advice on addressing their business issues.
You guys are also on LinkedIn too, right?
Yep, sure are.
I saw you on LinkedIn. Right now, this the VADSBC show live is streaming on Twitter. It's streaming on Facebook. It's streaming on LinkedIn. So people will be able to see this conversation on all those different places. And we're glad that you took the time. Now, I don't know. The last thing I always ask people, Paul, is if the one thing that is your pet project that you want to see happen the most, what is it? Could be in this industry, could be something else, but I want to know.
The pet project that I have is just, I want to see. Okay, it's like this, man. When I wrote a white paper 2 years ago about opportunity for Black and brown people in cannabis in Virginia. And for comparison's sake, I used that there's 484 Starbucks in the state of Virginia. Right. There's like 1,100 7-Elevens. If you look at 33% of those Starbucks, if they were owned by minorities, how do you think that would impact those communities? You see what I'm saying?
Very positive impact.
I just want to see Black and brown people be included, not divvied out, not let me give you this, just being included.
Just open the door. We'll get it ourselves and get it done.
Exactly. That's it.
And make sure you have equal access to the revenues,
funding,
to the funding, and those sort of things that everyone, because that's what the government's been doing since the beginning of this country, getting behind industries to help build those industries. And once again, it's your tax money. So these things are great, and having great partners. So, man, listen, I want to just basically thank you for being here.
My pleasure, man.
Let the music play a little bit now. You know, we're getting ready to go to the end of our show. But, Paul, we're going to have you back.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to working with you.
Having fun, man.
Have a great holiday.
You too. Have a safe holiday. Enjoy it. Be relaxed. Keep striving, because we got a lot of work ahead of us. And 2022 is going to be a changing year. I guarantee
it's going to be a fantastic year, man. Thank you very much, Paul. And we'll see you next time here on the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live here.
Thank you, Mark. Take care.
Take care, man.
You have a good evening. Bye-bye.